Good morning and welcome to this first live stream town hall meeting. When we were planning this town hall late last week, I said we could hold this in the event center and have everyone in the same place at the same time. And I was wisely admonished that this type of event did not conform to the recommendations that health professionals were providing. And so strange as this feels, I come before you this morning in this live stream format, and I appreciate you participating in this way too. We are going to record this message and we'll make it available to other people who perhaps couldn't join us on the live stream moment this morning. But certainly, I look forward to us all being face to face with each other again very soon. Really, three things I want to focus on this morning with the employees of Schreiner University. The first is to review what other colleges and universities are doing in regards to coronavirus and COVID-19. I want to talk a little bit about why we're considering a different path at this point. And then thirdly, I want to talk about what we're doing in preparation for pursuing this new path. Now, this is a rapidly changing situation, and our plan could very well be different by the end of the day. So for example, I believe that in a few hours, we'll be announcing the launch of a city and county-wide joint response team that will be meeting daily to coordinate information and activity. And we believe our participation in this project will help us have the most updated information to modify our plans as we move forward. And of course, we'll notify you if and when we do make these modifications. So let's get started with our 3 points. First, I want to review with you what other colleges and universities are doing. Many colleges and universities across the nation have extended their spring breaks, and many of these colleges and universities are actually extending it this week, the same week that our students are on spring break. So a lot of these schools actually started their spring break last week, and they've extended it into this week. I think for many of these schools that, especially that were on spring break last week, they simply weren't prepared to respond to what was going to be happening this week, and they made a wise and judicious decision to keep students off campus this week as they made their plans and decided how they were going to proceed. Colleges and universities, generally speaking, have also made the decision to move to online instruction. Sometimes those are with open campuses, which means that students are allowed to return to campus, live in the residence halls, eat at the various diners and other eating locations on campus. And some campuses have said we're going to go to online instruction, and we're going to close our campus. So students are not allowed to live in the residence halls or eat in dining facilities. And one question that you're probably asking, and that we've certainly asked ourselves, is why don't we just do what these other colleges and universities seem to be doing? And I want to share with you a few things that have shaped our decision-making process. One is that geography matters. And I think the decisions that urban schools and non-urban schools are making will necessarily be different. And if Schreiner was located in the midst of a major metropolitan area, I might very well have come to a different set of conclusions by this point. I think size matters also. And I think that campuses that have 10,000 students, maybe even 5,000 students, are going to have a very difficult time trying to manage all of those students and their various situations. This is a case in which our small size helps us better able to respond to this situation. I think mission matters also, and there are plenty of schools around the nation and across the state that intentionally serves a very large international student population. That's not traditionally been part of Schreiner's mission. We're a much more regionally focused institution, and while we do have some international students on campus, that's not a major part of our population. And I think capacity matters as well. So all colleges and universities are having to ask themselves, do we have capacity to work with our students if they're on campus? And so having a clinic on campus is not something that every college or university has. We do have that. Not every college or university has spaces where people can be isolated should they need to be isolated. We do have some of that capacity. And so these are some of the things that have been shaping our decision-making process. And I'm going to describe in just a few moments what we're doing to help students stay safe. But remember that the experts are currently telling us that for the traditional student, if they have any symptoms associated with the virus, most of these are equivalent to a mild or a moderate cold. And we're preparing to deal with these types of symptoms. Now, some students may have underlying health conditions which could result in the symptoms being much worse than those associated with a mild or moderate cold. And when these students have come to the attention of the provost and the dean of faculty, they then work with individual instructors to help accommodate those students. And my thanks to the faculty who are indeed accommodating these students. But these are and will be unique cases, and most of our students don't have that level of risk. It's probably also the case that some people are thinking, I've heard so much talk about social distancing in the last 48 hours, and doesn't this strategy run counter to that social distancing advice? And I would argue that if our students return to campus and stay on campus, eating their meals here, going to class, participating in activities in the afternoon and evenings, then we'll actually accomplish social distancing. They'll come into contact with a small group of people on campus, and most importantly, they will not expose more vulnerable populations to the virus, even if they appear asymptomatic. The truth is, residential colleges are actually ideally set up to provide social distancing for a population that's currently experiencing mild or moderate symptoms related to this virus. And the walls around our residential campus are primarily aesthetic today, but they still speak to the idea that the residential campus can provide sanctuary and refuge from the world outside those walls. It's also very much the case that while we think this will keep students safe by having them back on campus, that educational continuity is very important for us to achieve also. So faculty are and have been preparing to move courses online should we need to do so, but the education we provide best is in a relational context. Now, we do a pretty good job of creating context of relational learning in our matured online programs like the RN to BSN program and our master's programs, but we don't have the benefit of time and trial and effort to bring all of our other courses into this maturity. So for many courses, the relational context still provides the best learning experience for students, and it's our commitment to provide that to the extent that we are able. So why are we considering a different path by continuing our educational experience on campus? And I would say that first, we're assuming some inevitability here. We're assuming that coronavirus will continue to spread widely, and it will come to the Hill Country, Kerr County, and even on campus. It may in fact already be on campus and in the community. Now, there are no reports of COVID-19 in Kerr County at this moment, but let's assume that this virus is and will be something that we can't simply run from or simply wash our hands of and say it's someone else's problem. Instead, we have to recognize that this is our problem too, and we have to learn to live through this and not just run from it. And in the absence of a state or federally mandated quarantine or mandated self-isolation, we continue to believe that Schreiner University is one of the safest places our students can be. But here's perhaps the most difficult part of this town hall today. If Schreiner University is one of the safest places for our students to be, then Schreiner is almost certainly not one of the safest places for vulnerable members of our staff and faculty to be. And therefore, I'm asking employees with underlying health issues, including age, to discuss what the best course of action is with their supervisors and their vice presidents as soon as possible. And it may be in some of your best interest to develop strategies for limiting your exposure to the rest of the Schreiner community. And we'll absolutely help you do that to the extent that we're able. So what are we doing then in preparation for classes to be back in section next Monday, should that be our ultimate decision? Well, first of all, we have stood up our emergency response team, which is meeting daily. Every morning, first thing, that emergency response team meets. It coordinates information and activities across campus. It looks at activities on campus in an 8-week window and decides if they will still be held. And where appropriate, it's going ahead and taking action. So given the concern over especially vulnerable populations, we've suspended our volunteer program until further notice. And we've already made the decision to limit who can eat in the diner to only members of the Shriner community and not the Kerrville community beyond Shriner. Now, if you have particular concerns or issues you want someone to pay attention to, then I encourage you to contact Bill Muse, who's heading up the emergency response team, or one of the members of that team, including Dr. Julie Lunsford, Dr. Travis Frampton, Dr. Charlie Huber, Dr. Bill Davis, Dr. Lucian Costley, Marta Diffin, Ed Wingard, Rex Quick, Thomas Woods, and Toby Appleton. And my thanks to all of those folks for meeting each morning. It's also the case that this week faculty are having one-on-one faculty development sessions with the Center for Teaching and Learning and the Technology Department to help faculty prepare for moving courses into a different modality. I will say that in many of these conversations, faculty are having conversations about how to keep the movement into a new modality on what's relatively simple. There are things that we've never tested before, like having hundreds, even thousands of colleges move their courses online. And we don't know if LMS systems, those are learning management systems, or other things like that can actually carry that load. So we'll have to learn that as we move forward. It's also the case that today, this afternoon, in fact, Cabinet will make a decision about the remaining travel trips scheduled through the summer. Now, I fully expect that we will cancel those so as to not spend additional institutional or student funds on experiences that may ultimately not be resourced by, for instance, airlines or even countries we were planning to visit. There's a lot of work going on with disinfecting and cleaning this week as well. Let me start with Chartwells and let me say publicly how much I appreciate that they've provided meals over this spring break to our students who have made the decision to stay on campus over spring break. We've made the decision to close the Lion's Den, and we're no longer providing self-service options in the dining hall. It's also the case that Chartwell's employees are instituting a 15-minute cleaning rotation on their utensils. Elsewhere across campus, our custodial staff are disinfecting instructional spaces and other gathering spaces on campus. You're actually invited to help our custodial staff with this work. I know a lot of you say to yourself, how can I participate in this project? How can I pitch in? You can do this by contacting Ed Wingard if you have a few hours that you or perhaps your office wanted to devote to this effort. I'm also asking all employees to take a few hours this week and clean and disinfect their own office and their own workspace. If you'll please email Ed Wingard again when you plan to do this so that he can coordinate the distribution of cleaning supplies across campus and to the various offices. Now, I do want to remind everyone that we're all in this together. We're interdependent on each other, and I'm asking you not to take any of those cleaning products home with you, but we need these for keeping the campus as clean and as secure as possible. Assuming that classes resume on Monday, our instructional spaces will have cleaning and disinfecting products available in them so that students and/or faculty can further clean rooms and spaces when they enter, and so should they feel like they need to. Some of you have probably flown on an airplane in the last week, and you've recognized that new protocol on a lot of airplanes, that they give you a disinfectant wipe when you walk in so that you can wipe down your own seat. We're also adding additional hand sanitizers in the CCAC. It's also the case that this week our facility folks have done and are continuing doing an outstanding job of standing up locations for students to be isolated should that need to occur. We're also considering all the spaces we have on campus for classrooms to be held, giving people as much opportunity as possible for people to spread out. So we've got spaces that aren't typical classroom spaces, like ballrooms, like the event center, and it may very well be that we decide to use some of those as classroom spaces. We're also establishing a 24-hour COVID-19 information line and you'll receive information on that phone number by email whenever we share with you the link to where you can see this live stream town hall. Our campus clinic is also developing a protocol for screening students, and in some cases this protocol may result in students just needing to be observed. In some cases this protocol may indicate that students need to be isolated, and in some cases this screening may indicate that there's treatment beyond what can be provided on campus. Now, I think very importantly, having a clinic on campus that can provide this type of screening keeps our students out of health facilities both in Kerrville and in their hometowns, and we believe that this will help lighten the burden that will be carried by all of our healthcare facilities and professionals. It's also our intention to hire wellness nurses who will be available to check in on students beginning next week. They can do things like take temperatures, provide food from the dining hall, answer questions, etc. And this is really why Schreiner is probably one of the safest places for students who would be in the 80% of cases that will have mild to moderate cold-like symptoms. We can provide regular meals to students. We can provide wellness checks by nurses. We have a clinic on campus for further treatment or referral, and we have rooms and bathrooms for isolation should that be necessary. Our students can get some of this at their home, but most of them don't have access to this sort of comprehensive care. And of course, we'll continue, all of us, to follow the basic precautions recommended by the CDC. We're all going to clean our hands often. We'll avoid touching our face whenever possible. We're going to keep distances from each other when possible. You know, if you're sick, stay home. This is important all the time, but especially at this moment. We're going to cover our coughs. We're going to cover our sneezes. We're going to keep the items around us as clean as possible. I've recently heard, as you probably have, that our cell phones are things that need to be cleaned regularly. And I'll communicate with the campus, including students, no later than Thursday as to our ongoing plans and how we will proceed. Our North Star will continue to be how do we best take care of our students and how do we best take care of our employees. We'll modify our plans as the situation changes, and we'll develop those plans in order to maintain our fidelity to those guiding concerns. So thank you for your patience, your adaptiveness, your resiliency, and your deep commitment, both during this crisis and well beyond it, to the community of Schreiner University. Thank you, and I hope you have a great week.